Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Click and Mortar Podcast. Excited to have Jim here. We talk a lot about digital marketing and hope to bring little nuggets to give to you guys, the listeners, and you can take back and make your marketing better and grow your business. And so, Jim, I'm really pumped to chat. Met you when you were at NSI. You're at Spartaco Group now. You have a great background, with some big brands. And so I don't want to steal your thunder. I'd love to, introduce yourself. How'd you get started in marketing? What are some of the companies you've been involved with, and how'd you get to here?
Sure. Yeah, it's great to be here and spend some time with you guys to chat a little bit. Usually, Dustin, you and I are working through a lot of things to get some programs in market. But just a short bio of myself. I started in very traditional advertising, way back in the 90s, before really digital was a big deal. I mean, it was just starting to happen back in the day. But I'll start really more so in I bought media and did other things like that in kind of traditional ways. But I actually ended up at Lowe's in the early 2000s, which actually moved me from the Chicago area down to North Carolina. And I really cut my teeth as a marketer there. I was more kind of an advertising guy before that, and I became really a marketer at Lowe's. So my background spans 15 years of retail at Lowe's during its heyday, during the biggest growth years of that company, which were fantastic, to then going into distribution, working at a company called MSC, which is in industrial distribution side of the world, to the last couple 7-8 years of my career now being on the manufacturing side, and by far my favorite side of the business. Frankly, I wish I would have found it 20 years ago. But I've pretty much done any kind of marketing and advertising you can think of over the years. And really, the biggest thing I tell folks when I'm talking to them about their careers and what they're doing in this trade is you always got to be looking for what's coming next in this kind of line of work. I've gone from managing print advertising for Sears, a dead brand and a dead media, in the earliest part of my career, to now leading e-commerce and digital programs for manufacturing, for distribution, and teaching distribution who are kind of older distribution what digital means in their arenas, basically. So it's been an interesting transformation of myself as I've gone through my career. Absolutely.
I mean, you've been through a lot, like you just mentioned, from traditional to digital, and I love how forward thinking you are. So we have great conversations, but would love to hear, what does that progression look like? I think there's a lot of negative stigma around digital marketing, that it's fake, it's big numbers. I mean, is digital marketing important? And, what stories can you tie to that shows validity in that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I have a perspective of how important data and information is to measuring the impact of marketing. And I've always been focused on that throughout my career. But there's also an art still to what we do. And that's the thing that I would say most folks that are coming up into this now today, when I'm interviewing people, one of the biggest things I look for is, can they do a little bit of both? Because yes, there is a very strong data ROI. Can you get to the benefit of what you're really doing every day? But there's also still the art side of marketing. It's about the message. It's about the communication. It's not just about the logarithm you can get from an AI tool that tells you this is the best thing to say. There's more emotion in humans than there is just in data. So the mix of those two things is really important. And I would say what I've learned over my career is that balance sometimes gets out of whack. And you have to be careful not to let yourself get too far into numbers and then start, really dictating everything based on pure numbers, to getting too artistic and meeting folks who fall in love with their work, and it's not meaningful, impactful. It doesn't have meaningful impact on the business. And ultimately, that's all that really matters. We are in a trade that still matters relative to running businesses, not necessarily as a hobby that you just kind of do to just have fun. I mean, I'm not saying you can't have fun. That's a part of marketing. It always has been. But you're still in a business. Typically, you're still trying to generate a business, the results of a business. You can never forget that part when you're working through this stuff. So
I love that part. And we stress always to clients, message and creative is important. That's key to what you put out there. And that is going to dictate metrics as well. It seems like you have a great background because you started a while ago when it was a little more traditional and those things were a little more emphasized. And then digital comes along and everything's about measurement and metrics and ROI and all of that. What else can you say about finding that balance and art and science, that mix between those two? You come from and you've been in industries that are maybe a little antiquated and you've had to fight that battle. So what learnings have you had in both translating that internally and then putting that out on the market externally for the art and science piece of it all?
Yeah, it's a good question, because the last couple of roles I've had have been in what I consider very old industries and have traditionally been still leaning heavily into things like, I need a sell sheet for my sales guy to go stand up and hand out to a guy over on the other side of the counter at a distributor or at a retailer, whatever else. And there's some truth to that still. There are still people who consume information that way. And what has been a lot of fun actually in the transformation and Dustin's been along with me on the one that we just did, is transitioning from that pure kind of approach to a mix of that over time. And I think change management of that with industries, companies, people who are still kind of used to that being the way they do business, which there are still plenty doing that today. You can't just go in and say, you know what, hey, it's a digital world now. You got to stop. This is crazy. Cut out all the catalogs. Stop doing this. Stop, people don't do that. None of that's true, by the way. All of that still, yes, it's trending that way. I'll be dead before all that stuff's gone, and that's okay. But the reality is the balancing of those two things for when the market's ready for you, when the person on the other end is expecting to see that from you, or you can surprise and delight them with it. I would say some of the things that we did together, Dustin, were surprise and delight. We were showing up in digital platforms with our message to people who had never thought to see those kind of messages in their platforms before. And that starts to change and turn that wheel over time. And if you have sales teams, and I love this B2B space, I've got rep agents, I've got salespeople, I got a really complicated commercial team basically to operate with. You've got to understand where they're at in the process of transitioning and understand what you can do to, number one, help them do what they're doing today, but over time, move them to where you need to move them to, right? Get them engaged in more digital content. Help them understand it's not just about something pretty or a great video. It's actually about how does it get delivered and who does it get delivered to, and how focused are you on who's getting the message. And then again, getting back to, and is the message the right message, or is it just something you just threw at somebody and you're talking to yourself about what you'd like to say versus what they want to hear, right? And those are all really important aspects to it.
Yep. Talked a lot about data, and I think a big one that you're hitting on is the transformation. And it's not just, hey, we're going to do this. You have to have buy-in from a whole team. And I think the reason why so many people think the digital marketing doesn't work is they don't have a pulse on the right KPIs. Are they tracking back to the business results? Are we showing up? Are we getting clicks? Right. I think a lot of people show up there. We created a cool dashboard, and I think to me the dashboard is pivotal in creating this transformation and getting people on board. How big is it to understanding what KPIs you're marching towards as an organization, and how does that really impact the conversations in terms of creating that transformation? Because it's tough, but I think without the data or having a pulse on it, really looking at it, you kind of lose we're actually doing something. We're making an impact.
Yeah, it's I love that we made we built that dashboard, Dustin. I crack all the time around here. I'm like, hey, we're going to be able to leverage what I helped pay for my last job with Dustin now here, right? It's a good thing. So and I mean that in a sincerely good way. We built that together, and it was it was based on our business model. It was based on a business that had unique needs relative to what we needed to measure the impact of our business, right? And I think too many times, too many folks are looking for the easy answer of what their KPIs are going to be is like, well, what does everybody else use? I'll use those. And that's not really the way to connect it to your business. That's, again, gets back to kind of oversimplifying what we're talking about. Anyone can measure the top five KPIs, and you can Google it. You can chat GBT. What are the best five? Anybody can do that, right? Not everyone can connect and understand their business and how those KPIs actually light up their business or don't light up their business, right? And that's the most important element of what we're talking about. The dashboard we built was very B2B oriented. It was in an industry that was very specific. It had rep agents in mind, some engagement with CRM and some not. I mean, we kind of knew what we were working against, and we built our KPIs to be very focused on those things. I think our biggest challenge was coming up with benchmarks because they don't exist, and you have to start to build your own benchmarks. You can't just say, well, what's the benchmark out there? You can, and by the way, I pushed really hard. Dustin, you can call. We picked benchmarks, and I said, guys, if we don't hit them, we don't hit them. But you got to have something you're pointing at. If you're not pointing at anything, you have no idea if you're making any progress forward. All you know is you've got a number that you're looking at. It doesn't mean anything, right? So I think those are some of the elements, at least as I think about it, as you're building it. And I'm much more of a builder than a runner of a business. I'm not a great operator. I'm actually more of a constructor, I guess I would say. Dustin, you'd have to validate that. But I think generally speaking, I'm much more engaged in that kind of thing because just the way my kind of brain works. I like trying to solve problems and figure out the best way to connect dots between things. And once you get them rolling, they can help you run the business. They can help you figure out where you're missing, you're gapping. If you don't have a great CRM attachment to your digital campaigns, don't force one because you're not going to make any progress with it there. You have to find a way to make KPIs that can work within the context of your business. And again, you might have to take a leap of faith of it connecting to sales or to revenue because everybody wants to go right to the e-com ones, which are so easy, right? And okay, I sold it through the store. What if I don't sell things through an online store? What if I sell them through my customers through their online store and I can't get their data? How do I build KPIs back to my business to know that what I'm doing is valuable and a part of and contributor to the growth of my business? And that's kind of the fun part of the dashboards. To your point, Dustin, they're never ending, right? So I say we'll be able to leverage those things. We're still going to change them, but we'll leverage them to start the conversation in this business now that I've moved on to a new business, right? So.
Yep, and that's great. And I say that because I feel most organizations underappreciate a dashboard and a living, breathing way to gauge how are we trending. The one thing I did appreciate was how much we looked at it on the weekly basis and how much conversation that created. I mean, I remember starting 2 years ago when we first started with everything. I mean, no one knew what impressions were. I mean, everyone's kind of running in silos. And to me, once this dashboard got going, I love what you said about being the educator, because once I got going, you quickly started educating the whole team on what their roles are and how they impact the KPIs. I mean, and very quickly in a matter of a couple months, I mean, we set not a made up one, but one that, was close to your business, and together made a big impact on that. And so it's kind of cool over the 12 months to watch not only the education happen, but go from silos to working together. And I mean, I don't think you can really create that without a dashboard and having such discipline at getting the team to look at it and answer to it as well. Because so many people just gloss over it, and you can make so much more progress quicker if everyone's aligned on what we're looking at and how you actually impact this number.
Yeah, it's funny when you say that, Dustin, too. I always think about, like, why was I wired to push us so hard to do that on a regular recurring basis? And I was thinking about it as we were getting ready to do this call, and it was, you guys talked about, your background and things you picked up on. And that drive and that kind of insight came from my retail days. And it had nothing to do with digital. It had everything to do with how we ran our digital or our retail business every single day. Every Monday morning, I was on a call with all the operators in my division of the company, and we were looking at performance of sales by business, by territory, by store. And it was very, very focused on where are the gaps, where are we doing well, and it was just a rhythm that you saw on a regular recurring basis. I've actually not experienced that anywhere else in my career other than in my retail days. And it was fantastic. And it was beaten into my head to the point of how important it was. But I realized how valuable it was to us at the time when we were growing that business, because like I mentioned, I was at Lowe's, and when I started there, we were about a $16 billion revenue company. When I left, we were $60 billion. And so the only way to do that is to run your business in a way that you're paying attention to the mile markers of what's going on with the core metrics of your business. And obviously these were very retail oriented. We looked at things like customer care and other things that were related to the store too. So it wasn't just revenue, returns and all of the things you can think of on the retail side, but those apply. That kind of way of thinking applies to how you should be thinking about your digital business. And it should be more than just cart metrics for my cart. It should be more than that. And that's kind of the point of, and the aspect you were talking about is it's kind of been ingrained in me. You got to look at your business on a regular basis, and you got to have the right metrics across your business to make sure you're doing it right.
Great little segue there, because I feel like we can do a whole episode on this, setting your KPIs and determining your key business metrics for your whole business. But can you tease a little bit for us or give an example of how did you come up with those? How do you come up with those? And is there art and science in coming up with those and testing those?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mentioned some of the nuances of the business I'm in today and the one I was just in previously, which are very similar. I'll give a really weird version of this, but we have these things called rep agents. They sell on behalf of our business, and our sales, we have direct sales people, but we also have people that are basically sales managers. They manage these agents, right? And they're selling our business on our behalf. And you could start to go, well, that doesn't really matter. It's not really related to, what you're doing. And what I came to believe and really pushed on my team around was that part of our marketing was to that group of people. Because if you understand how this whole thing works, your business is on a line card. I sell Coke, I sell Pepsi, I sell whatever, right? I want my name on the top of that list, that when that rep is out there today talking to that customer, I'm the first brand or the first company they're talking about. That's a marketing KPI, whether you want to believe it or not. Getting to those guys first and getting to an impact where they're consuming the information you provide them, that they're giving you feedback back into the system. That's another KPI that becomes valuable. You can start to identify that, hey, they're paying attention because they're asking questions, they're doing things. So there's no secret to that. It's not like, well, how much revenue did they drive based on me sending them a blah, blah, blah. It was like, no, am I seeing indicators that tell me that what I'm trying to do here, and by the way, those were all digital campaigns to these guys. It was emails. It was also other ways to reach them. Is like, are we really getting the impact we're trying to get out of it? Or does it just feel good? We're just sending stuff and like, yeah, check, I sent it to them. We're good. Like, that's not valuable. And you can't get to that if you don't identify what the KPIs around that are or need to be, so that you can say, yeah, I feel like we're making progress. And there is some art to that, right? There's no like, well, if they're giving us feedback and they're opening the stuff and they're consuming the information and does that mean anything? I don't know. You got to have a leap of faith at some point that some of those things are the things you're trying to do, that you should be able to believe that there is a connection back to the business and how it works. So that's kind of a weird version of like what I'm describing, but our marketing plan was many components that looked just like that. And that was just one piece of the business. And without the insight of how they work and how they operate and what they do every day, you can't really get good KPIs either. So every buyer at a distributor or every buyer in an organization you're trying to sell to, you needed to understand what they were compensated on. What do they care about every day? Because that usually led to how to understand the KPIs of whether they were behaving the way you were expecting them to when you're marketing to them, right? So
really quickly in that example with the agents, would it be something like, all right, well, we have our top of funnel metrics for them, which are like open rates and click-through rates, and that kind of stuff for emails, and then we have deeper down metrics of, average sale by, gross partner and the growth of that over time? Is that
yes. So
around
you could actually connect it to things like the brand I was focused on, or the launch I was focused on was these products, and in their territory we're seeing that get better, worse, not as good. So you could actually connect it back into the business from a revenue standpoint. When you start at the top level, to your point, are they opening the emails? Are they doing? We added other metrics like, are they downloading content from our DAM solution? Are they taking the content and taking the next action that says, yeah, they're using the content? Some of our agents were actual marketers themselves. So are they using it on their channels? Are we seeing it through what they're doing in the marketplace? So some of them were data driven. Some of them were more nuanced. Are we seeing things from, XYZ rep agent in the Maryland area? It looks like they're doing some things. What are they doing? And you pull it back in. So it can be very precise, but it can also be kind of nuanced in terms of how you look at it and gauge success. You always come back to the big metrics. They point you in the right direction. Like your open rates of your reps in the East Coast can tell you a lot about where you start looking to say, if they're not even opening it, why even look at the rest of those things? Like, let's go to the next level, right? So
sure.
Love it. You've been on top of the data. You've helped create multi-billion-dollar growth at huge corporations. What's the most exciting story that you've been part of that I guess you can share in terms of where you felt most impacted, or how you made an impact on the business?
Yeah. There's a lot of fun times over the years, and a lot of crazy times, frankly, too. So, it's interesting. I don't necessarily ever point to one particular thing, but there is one moment that I can say that it's one of those feather in the cap kind of things that you don't really see very often. This was when I was at MSC. I haven't talked much about that experience at all, but at MSC, I ran the website, and I also helped define the segment strategy for the business, how to segment the business, who our customers were, how to segment our customers differently. And in that process, I had a responsibility for a group of customers that we defined as marketing only customers. And what that means is they were some of the smallest customers that could engage via our website to do their purchasing, and they could call in and talk to our call center folks, and they didn't necessarily need a very expensive rep to show up at their door every year or every month, because they were, they would do $1,000, $2,000 a year, which was not a big enough thing to send a guy out to go out and get orders all the time. Well, the success that we had there in terms of building out that business, building the metrics and KPIs around it, and growing it. It was about a $200 million business, 200,000 customers, by the way. Wow. Big group of customers. They're basically little shops that do typically metalworking work that fed the rest of the supply chain for manufacturing. Basically, is the kind of like guy that could make some sheet metal out in his backyard or his barn out back. So that group of business, we had to transition from seeing a rep every once in a while to not seeing any reps, to putting them on a loyalty program where we gave them because it's B2B business, we gave them a very static type of discount program for their type of business. Gave them the ability to get lots of other data and information on the website to serve kind of reordering, all the things you can think of that a small business would need to make their business run better. But doing all of that and transitioning that group of customers from having kind of high touch customer engagements from us to low engagement, mostly digital, was a risk, a big risk when we went down that path. It was a big challenge, and the results of it were great. That part of the business that I ran, we outpaced the company. The 3 years that I had that part of the business, we outpaced the growth of the company the whole time I was in that role. But I also, the cool part of the feather in my cap thing, the reason I always highlight it is I got something called a SIDS award, which is usually a salesperson's award. They had highest sales growth, that kind of thing award. They never gave it to anybody but salespeople, ever. And Sid was the founder of the company, so it was a sales guy thing. They didn't want to give it to anybody but salespeople. I was the first person outside of sales to get it and be up on the stage and do the whole spiel, and it was awesome, and that was probably, that was a long time ago. That was 10 years ago, but it was one of those moments you're like, hey, what I did digitally really was recognized in a way that, different than the rest of the organizations even operating. And the performance forced them to put me on the stage and say, hey, look at what this guy did. So it was pretty cool. That was pretty fun.
Amazing. Congrats on that. That is impressive. Speaking of which, we know you're at a new role and moving into a new territory and probably working on innovating where you are now. So what are your goals in the next 6 to 12 months? Where are you going? What are you working on and what are you excited about?
Sure. So what's exciting about this role is I came to this role for a couple reasons, and I did work with Dustin at NSI. And NSI is a great company. I did some great things there. We had a great team. They have a great future ahead of them. I chose to move on to, I mentioned earlier, I'm a bit more of a builder than an operator. And not that it was in full operation mode yet at NSI, but it was starting to get there. The company was getting much bigger. We went from a couple $100 million to just under $1 billion there in my 4 years there. So we did quite a bit of growth there as well. I'm looking at my age and at my time, not because I'm old, but because just where I'm at maturity wise and how I think about my life and my career. I'm always looking for the next challenge and the next thing I can help build. That's really what brought me to move on from there and over here. And this is a perfect opportunity. It's a smaller company, very specialized in what we do. Very similar type of business in terms of how it works as far as reps and salespeople. It's in the utility and telecom spaces, which is adjacent to the spaces I was just in. So it's not, I'm not going into, pharmaceuticals and clothing. I'm staying in a similar place that's really close to me. But the other piece of it is just like almost every business in this space, which I find very, very interesting and engaging for myself, is there's some traditional things going on with bits of movement towards digital, bits of movement towards these things that we've been talking about today. And I love building those things in organizations and showing the organization what can be done, how successful it can be, how much it can help grow that business. And how many more times I do that before I'm done, I don't know. But that's what I'm really here to do. We're looking at digitizing the business, going from heavily trade magazine spending behaviors to, and we probably should still do some of that, but why don't we move a lot of it over here, because there's a much better way to do this, much better way to measure the success of it. Frankly, at the end of the day, there's a much better way to reach our customers this way than there is the other way, frankly. So even though they feel good, they're not as good as they used to be, as they were years ago. I'm not even sure how good they were years ago, by the way, but I'll leave that to somebody else to figure out down the road.
Jim, this has been great. I feel like we could probably go on for another couple episodes. You could probably even create a whole educational series on digital transformation. But this has been great. Love, if someone's trying to connect with you, wants to send you a message, where can they find you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty public as far as my information goes. I love talking about these kind of things. I actually still, I'm at the age now where my kids have other kids that have gone to school, and now I'm teaching them a little bit about what they should know if they want to listen to me, obviously. But yeah, I'm open to talking to folks about things. And frankly, I still have a lot to learn. That's the other piece of it, is never stop learning. That's the thing is I could have probably cashed it in 10 years ago and said, I'll just kind of ride this thing out, keep doing pre-printed inserts and television campaigns and all this other stuff and hang out at Lowe's for another 10 years. And frankly, that's not how I'm wired. I had to move on and try some new things and do some fun stuff. And that's the only way you learn, is by talking to other people that have been doing things. I learned a lot from you, Dustin, as we were working through our programs, and obviously our friend Jim Lillig, who we were working with. It's, there's always something else new in this space to learn about. So it's a good thing you guys do these kind of pieces, because I'm sure it's helpful to folks to hear what other people's experiences are in the space.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up, someone that's in that role of the digital transformation, what's one last piece of advice you'd give to them as they take that on?
Slow down to speed up. Go too fast, you're going to scare people off, and you're going to end up making it harder and slower for yourself down the road. So I don't mean slow down like at a snail's pace. I just mean slow down, listen. We talked about it earlier. I had some official training in change management earlier in my career. I'm not going to say all of it was valuable, but there are components of it that are important. So if you're in one of these roles and you're really trying to move an organization who's not necessarily, they may even be saying they want to be there, but you can see the behavior's really not there. Think really hard about how you're approaching it. Make sure you're not going too fast, scaring people away, and frankly, making it harder on yourself to move the ball forward.
Awesome. Thank you for the time. Thank you for all your knowledge and history. And everyone listening to the podcast, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next episode.